Now, on the first anniversary of his miracle election win, Scott Morrison can take pride in the way he and his government have handled the health response to the pandemic. But as today's polls show, politically, saving lives is relatively easy. You throw money at the health system and you throw money at people whose jobs have been impacted. At least you throw money at them temporarily, because after all, who can argue against throwing everything at a problem when saving lives is at stake? But the politics of restoring an economy will be much harder, and that's the challenge that the government confronts now. Yes, the Prime Minister, and he stressed these words, he said we're not out of the woods when it comes to this virus. But that's not what's worrying people now. Instead, what's concerning people is how much longer we can go on with 1.5 million Australians on the double dole, the job seeker payment, especially without the usual requirements to actually seek work, and 6 million people plus on the job keeper payment, the employee wage subsidy that costs taxpayers nearly 10% of GDP for this payment alone over its 6 months' life, and already there are calls for it to be extended. Over the past week, we have started to see some restrictions lifted. It's early days and small steps indeed. And even with this easing, we all understand that some of the tougher restrictions will remain. It's hard to see, for instance, big crowds being allowed at sporting events or concerts or international travel being opened up anytime soon. And that inevitably means higher unemployment and lower business activity than might otherwise be the case without this virus. So, of course, what we have to do now is take a long, hard look at what we can do to be more productive, to use this crisis to reshape the way we do business, the way we run government, and not to waste the opportunity to reform, as will many other countries. But does anyone really think that the lion will continue to lay down with the lamb once this immediate virus threat has passed, unless we make it happen? Will the Green Movement, for instance, be readier to allow new baseload power stations, new mines, new dams, in order to maximise jobs and boost prosperity? What do you think? Will the welfare lobby accept that the dole needs to revert to pre-corona levels so that it will always pay to be in work rather than out of work, so that we don't bring up a generation of kids who think they've got a right to money for nothing? Will Labor and the unions accept that we need to have more flexible work arrangements in order to give Australian manufacturing a fair go at being competitive? Will the premiers, who couldn't even agree in the National Cabinet to a start to schools, be likely to agree on tax reform and changes to which level of government does what, so that we can have a more effective and efficient federation? Well, the answers are pretty obvious, aren't they? All credit, as I said, to the Prime Minister for his calm and purposeful leadership that's been provided over the past 2 months. It's his leadership that's led to the consensus over handling the first impacts of this virus. And it's his leadership that will be crucial to creating any further consensus when we're talking about an economic fix in addition to the health fix. But the economic challenge ahead is going to make the health one look easy, because unlike the way it's worked out to date, the PM can't just write a big cheque to make all the dissent go away. On the economic front, all the usual lobbies will adopt all their usual positions unless someone, and on this I mean the Prime Minister, is prepared to say precisely what changes are needed and to then fight for these changes. Next week, the PM is expected to make a headland speech to kick off the debate about the longer-term reforms needed at this critical time in Australia's history. Let's hope it's a lot more than the typical jargon and buzzwords so loved by his predecessor, words like innovation, that in the end mean bugger all. Because Australia, if we always do what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always got. And that, before we even had this crisis, was an economy that was becoming less competitive and less prosperous. And PM, this is where we're going to need your leadership the most.